The most important belief before you start that whole journey, though, is just believe that you're worthy, no matter what, just as you are.
Yeah. This one, I'm actually a little bit nervous. I don't know why, but I'm also incredibly excited. Before I get to your introduction, and there is a lot to get through from an introduction point of view, how do you best describe what you do right now?
Oh, right now? I think in simple terms, I just like to help people do things better and be better for it. If I was in really simple terms, yeah,
Okay,
help people
I
with
like.
yeah. I don't even know what to call myself. Yeah, I'm a mindset coach, professional mentor, leadership coach. So helping people is much easier as a catch-all.
I like that. Well, speaking of helping people, that's why we met. And you are on the podcast because you are someone who is 100% shaped and maybe saved my life. 2016 was a horrific year for me from a professional, but also a personal point of view. And that was when we were introduced for the first time. And we will get to a bit more of that story. But to introduce you, Ben Crowe. You are Australia's most in-demand professional mentor and leadership coach, working with athletes, coaches, teams, and executive teams all over the world. Your work involves helping people with their mindset in a performance sense and with their perspective in a personal sense to find a balance between confidence and happiness and achievement with fulfillment. Prior to mentoring, you spent many years abroad working with Nike as their head of international sports marketing, and then returning to Australia, expanding your mentoring, working with recently retired world number 1 and 3-time Grand Slam champ Ash Barty, who is obviously a good friend of mine as well, 8-time world surfing champion Stephanie Gilmore, 15-time Grand Slam champion Dylan Alcott, 8-time Grand Slam champion, lots of Grand Slams, Andre Agassi, the Australian cricket team, who are currently world number 1, and 3-time AFL premiers, the Richmond Footy Club, which is obviously the journey we went on together. And then during COVID, with the desire to help people at scale, you created Mojo, the perspective company, hence your jumper you're wearing there. And it helps companies put the human being first and the human doing second. And through simple, profound, and playful perspective shifts, helps teams sustain high performance, build resilience, and lead with purpose. Many of Australia's and the world's most successful companies have now successfully implemented the Mojo way. So, lots in there. It's been a journey, but where we like to start here on Shaped is very much at the childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about the Crowe household? I know you had a very tight-knit family. What was life like growing up in your world?
Yeah, I am the youngest of 6, but my brothers and sisters were much older than me. So my oldest brother is 15 years older than me, and my sister 8 years older than me. So I was a long way down the pecking order. And mum and dad working really hard, trying to make ends meet. So I remember spending a lot of time on my own, kicking the footy in the park, riding my bike, imaginary, climbing trees, cowboys and Indians with friends and stuff. And I remember thinking, I was tapping into imagination a lot, picturing myself kicking the winning goal in a grand final and so forth. And I think my imagination was huge, but probably so was my curiosity. Had a lot of, anxiety like most kids. I had big ears and knobby knees, and, my full name's Benedict, right? So anyone with Dick in their name in the 1970s, like first day of school was my greatest.
Copped a bit of feedback.
Oh my God. My nickname was Benzedick, right, from my brothers and sisters. So you can imagine, very, very tight knit, but you know what it's like, very good at hanging shit as well. So,
Yeah.
but incredibly close. Yeah. Enormous amount of laughter and love. And yeah, I never felt that I wasn't loved unconditionally. That was pretty powerful. My dad had a wicked sense of humor. So mum was definitely the strict person in the house, and dad was always breaking the rules. But they also had an incredible marriage as well. And I think both of them are role models for me, both in terms of values, but also just, not taking life so seriously.
We'll get to your dad because you lost him at a pretty young age. With regards to the marriage, a successful marriage. What do you think the key attributes of their relationship that now you've obviously implemented in your own life and marriage that they showed you?
Yeah. Selflessness, I think. Both mum and dad were just incredibly selfless, always putting others first. Very values driven, very purpose driven. But yeah, I just keep on coming back to love and laughter, but also trying to create experiences for the family as well. I have wonderful memories of whenever there's an opportunity to have holidays down the beach, or up at Bright, or going up to Dimboola where our cousins lived. Just wonderful memories of always trying to go on family holidays. So that connection and opportunity, adventure, and so forth, I think they instilled in all their kids as well. But very much, both of them were very service orientated. Mum ran for politics, got involved in creating a lot of organisations for especially promoting women in the home. Dad ran a cleaning business, and cleaned all these different schools. We had like 50, 60 part-time staff, but very service oriented. And I think that was probably core to, it wasn't about them. It was definitely about helping others, I think. Yeah.
You touched on the trips and the adventure and curiosity and love. One of your favorite questions to ask people when you go on a journey with mentoring them is, what's your earliest happy or fondest childhood memory? What's yours?
I'm very good at teaching vulnerability, Koch. You didn't tell I had to be vulnerable. An early play memory for me is at Janjuk Beach. The whole family are there. We have surf mats. I don't know if you remember, you're too young for surf mats. Pre-boogie boards, there were surf mats that you'd blow up, but they had fins on them. And I'd be with my brothers and sisters out in the ocean, and I was pretty young. And I remember coming back and lying on top of my dad's back and falling asleep in the sun on top of my dad. And I have this vivid memory. And I think not long after he died, I found at the Victorian market, there was a photograph from Italy, and it was sonno profondo, which I think it means deep sleep. And I looked at it and go, oh my God, it took me straight back. So I had to buy it. Right?
Yeah.
Couldn't afford it as a 16-year-old kid. So that's easily my earliest, happiest, and I guess playful memory as well. Yeah.
You obviously have a place down there. Is that why you wanted to remain connected, because of so much of the fond memories and then creating it for your family growing up?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Mum and dad were very keen to buy a block of land down at Janjuk. And I think they looked at one. It was, it's probably $12,000, right? In 1984, 85. And then dad passed away. So, lost my dad and the beach house or the future beach house. So I think ever since then, I'd always had this dream to hopefully one day have a house down the Great Ocean Road. And I came back to Australia after the Nike chapter in 2001, and I was super keen, but Sally wouldn't let me buy a beach house until we didn't have a family house. So we bought a family house. I think the very next day I drove down the beach, but Janjuk had changed a lot. It had become the urban development with Geelong. So we kept driving to Fairhaven, actually to Lorne, and then it was probably a bit too far, and then did a U-turn and found Fairhaven. And yeah, that's definitely my happy place, and it's probably saved me so many times over the years.
I grew up as a river boy.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Lorne. My grandmother had one of those places you had a certain amount of time to use per year, and I'll never forget how excited I got to see the beach that I ran that fast straight through the sliding door.
Oh,
and smashed it, and it smashed my head.
Ouch!
Not the fondest of memories,
but still, that wasn't your early happy memory.
For whatever reason, it's still something that I like. Seeing the beach, I still remember that moment. Maybe the excitement, less so the outcome.
Well, I was just going to say, when we do this exercise, right, that early play memory, I used to do early happy memory, but sometimes it can trigger people with their childhood. They might not find a happy memory, so I flipped it to just an early play memory. So there's no value judgment, right, because you were just playing, right? Yeah. What's crazy about that is then you ask someone, okay, how did you feel in that memory? And having done this thousands of times, and you have as well, right? The 5 themes that keep on popping up every time someone does this exercise is, well, playful, because the playful memory, free, carefree, and I know that was one of your words, excited or adventurous. Fourth one is safe or warm or belong. And the fifth one is loved. And I gave this talk a few years ago in London, and the psychiatrist in the audience asked me a question. He goes, Ben, why do these 5 territories keep showing up when someone does this exercise to find the early play memory? And I said, I don't know, it's above my pay grade, right? But maybe, just maybe, that's who we are as humans, right? Before we feel like we've got to fit in, we get pimples, we've got to fit into a tribe. Because in that memory that both of us just described down at Lorne and Jane Jack, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to achieve anything. You didn't have to be validated or prove yourself to anyone else. You were just in that moment. And I think if you find more of those memories and you connect back to those words and show up from that place as a human, you kind of remove so much baggage as you get older. And these other memories that kind of block off the early playful memories. It's quite profound, in terms of, so you were excited and ran through a glass window, right? So
I did. Gladly, the next time we went down there, they'd put the safety sticker across the top, and I still got excited and managed to pull myself up before I broke it again. But you touched on losing your old man. You were 16 at the time, I believe. For a young kid who obviously, loves both mum and dad, but Dad, I assume, had a pretty profound impact in your life to date. What's it like losing someone and grieving? Was it a long period of time? Was it short and really hard? Or, even to this day, is there moments where you go, geez, I'd love for him to be around?
Yeah, I think anyone who's gone through grief, it takes time, and time does heal, but it never takes away the grief. You just reframe it in a slightly different way, right? And life doesn't prepare you for this. And I was probably in shock and disbelief for quite a while.
Yeah.
And you go through the different stages, like, how am I going to get through this? And I quickly found a way through with family and friends, right? So the love, but you and I speak a lot about your greatest growth comes from your darkest times, right? So for me, the curiosity and probably the imagination that I had at a pretty young age in terms of wondering and exploring and so forth was kind of like, how am I going to get through this? Yeah. And as I said, I think that kind of shaped my journey to some degree. I remember I went off the rails at school pretty badly, and mum
explain off the rails. Is it?
Oh, I just didn't want to go to school.
Disinterest.
Didn't want to go to class, failing exams and so forth. And I used to really enjoy school.
Yeah.
And there was just the period there where I was starting to go off the rails a bit. And mum had a really good connection with Whitefriars College, the Carmelites, and some really special teachers, Father Shane O'Connor and Marie White in particular. There's 2 individuals that used to drive me home from school. Might have even had occasionally a beer or a glass of wine. I probably shouldn't say that, right? But they just looked after me, Ben, the person, not the student kind of thing. And so I just felt I was surrounded by people that kind of had my back. And I remember one day driving to school, or mum driving me to school one morning, and I asked her how she was getting through it, and she said that she still talks to Dad. Obviously she can't see him, but he's always there. So she was alone, but she wasn't lonely.
Yeah.
And I think she described Dad as like an angel that she can still talk to. And that really stuck with me. It was quite jarring. I think that also helped save me to some degree. So from that moment on, I think I've dedicated my life to Dad. And, whenever you're in a tricky situation, I can kind of say, okay, what would Dad do here? How would Dad handle this? And it might be just not take it seriously, kind of let it go, or think about the other person or so forth. And that's been really powerful for me along my journey. And I've lost a lot of really good friends, along the way to car accidents or suicide or so forth. And I also tap into them whenever I can. So I feel like my advisory board can be more spiritual than actual, but it's really powerful. And you know the power of dedication better than anyone I know, Cotch, in terms of how you've used it yourself. But that's been really helpful to get me through that. Yeah. So while it was the biggest crucible moment I've ever gone through in my life, it's probably also shaped me in such a profound way as well.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you for sharing. So you touched on how much you loved school, then had a little bit of a rough patch.
Yeah.
But then your studies post-school, what were your interests? Where did you want to go or think you wanted to go? And did that shift or change at all? I know you studied philosophy, which I didn't even know what that word meant before we met. So thank you for introducing me to that word. But can you take me on a little bit of the journey from studies to then the opportunity that presents itself at Nike?
Yeah, totally. Like most kids in the 1980s, I think I wanted to play AFL football. I went down to Melbourne the same night. Jimmy Steins went to Melbourne, but I was only 15 or 16. Slug Jordan was the coach of the under-19s. I think Gary Lyon was captain of the under-19s. But then I broke my leg, dislocated my shoulder, and I was too scrawny to play AFL football, right? And I worked that out pretty quickly. And my brothers and sisters are doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers. And I think I wanted to be a wannabe of all those things. And my sister Liz is a lawyer and she was studying law, and I really wanted to get into law, and I missed out by 5 marks. I was devastated. I thought that was going to be my career. And they told me that if you get credits in first year arts, you can cross over to law.
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, first year uni, you discover girls and parties and Thursday night nightclubs in the 1980s. So fair to say I didn't get those credits, right? I think our motto was 50's a pass and 51's a wasted effort. Not that you should teach that to your kids, by the way. Anyway, so obviously I didn't get the credits, but I studied philosophy, which is the study of wisdom, anthropology, which is the study of humans and human behavior, and literature. I loved stories. I loved reading and writing as well to some degree. But I had no clue how I was going to use those 3 disciplines. And how's that? 30 years later, that's literally all I do, right? Is using practical wisdom and to help humans and human behavior make sense of their story and then tell their story. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That's the incredible thing, Koch, about connecting back. And that's why these questions you're asking me are quite profound. Because if you can connect back to either early play memories or things that you were interested in at school or studied and so forth, they kind of shape you.
Yeah.
You don't realize that they're shaping you. Like I didn't realize why I was choosing these subjects, but it kind of makes sense down the line.
Yeah.
You can only join the dots looking backwards, right? So like, why would I study philosophy? But clearly I was interested in it, but I didn't know the application of that until, later on in life. And, when I met you and other athletes and stuff. So it's really interesting, isn't it? So if you see what your kids are doing today, what they love, what they're curious about, what they love to play with.
Make a note.
Make a note. Yeah, seriously. If they like Lego, it's a good chance they're going to be an architect or a builder or, and so forth, or problem solving, might even be a consultant, right? So it's just fascinating understanding our play history later on in life. It's pretty cool.
You do step into Nike's profound culture, and it's very different to a lot of organizations, particularly at that time. And you talked about storytelling. Well, that was kind of their superpower. How did that shape the journey you then went on to lead a big team across the world? You were very young. I think were you the youngest executive?
Youngest director for Nike International in Asia Pacific. Yeah,
that must come with some pressure as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I mean, you advise a lot of top CEOs and corporate people nowadays. You must see imposter syndrome on steroids. Did you have it?
Massively. Yeah, I had to lie about my age when I used to go to Japan because of the whole respect thing. I remember having an anxiety attack at Nike as well with all the vice presidents in a meeting about the Sydney Olympics and it was leading up to the Atlanta Olympics. And someone asked me a question and I thought I was just there to listen, but they actually asked me my point of view. And they're like, I don't have a point of view. And I just froze. I literally froze. And I felt my heart and I must have started shaking and so forth. I'll never forget Rudy Chapper, who's a mentor of mine, was in the meeting. He saw what was happening to me in real time.
Yeah.
And he saved me, like literally saved me. And I couldn't breathe. That's the first kind of panic attack or anxiety attack I remember having in a professional sense. And I remember after that thinking, God, what just happened? Like, what story was I telling myself in that moment? So yeah, I didn't understand how to deal with pressure. And I also didn't understand why that happened. But to your question about that journey, when Dad died, I had this itch that I couldn't scratch. this, when you're putting suntan lotion on your back and you just
Can't reach.
and then you get this sunburn.
You should try having my shoulder flexibility. It's not good.
That was my metaphorical burnt patch, right? And the itch was just how people navigate the world and how some people do it better than others. Some people have better perspective than others. And when I joined Nike, that itch just got even worse. Kind of understanding why athletes, these really high profile athletes, and some are more high profile than others, right? Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong, they got so caught up in money and fame and recognition and status and so forth, and went off the rails, and they kind of forgot the intrinsic reason these little boys fell in love with sport in the first place. And I remember at the 1996 Olympics, a young comedian by the name of Jerry Seinfeld. Fun fact, he wore Nike shoes in almost every episode, or every episode, a different pair of Nike shoes. And so we had a division called Hollywood Promo. And because the Olympics were in the US, we had every celebrity wanting to come out and hang out at that Olympics at the meet all the athletes and so forth. And I was running the part of the team running the center with the idea to then do the whole thing in Sydney Olympics 4 years later. I got nothing in common with Jerry Seinfeld, right? And we're showing him around, and he said something so profound just through over a coffee, that there's no such thing as fame school where you can learn to be famous. And I went for a run the next day, and I couldn't stop thinking about that. In my mind, my run was getting faster and faster and faster as my brain was going crazy. And I think that's the first time I thought about, what about, there's also no such thing as human being school where you can learn to be a human first and an athlete second. And I think that just really fascinated me, because I saw athletes that went the other way, that went internal, not external. And Andre Agassi's a great case study. Ash Barty, they're great case studies as well. As athletes that go internal and do the work can separate what they do from who they are. And their identity becomes less about being an athlete and more about intrinsic, more about being a human being. And that just fascinated me. Yeah. And that probably took me on the journey to what I'm doing today, right? At Nike, we were selling shoes, but I was working with athletes and helping them tell their stories. And that was a real passion for me. But, it's taken me 56 years to work out what I want to do when I grow up, Cotch. And still on the journey.
The founder in Nike, close friend,
Phil Knight,
the shoe dog. What's it like to have someone who is so forward thinking, so willing to evolve and adapt with what the world is doing? And I actually never understood Nike's story until you explained that the view was that everybody, or if you have a body, you are an athlete. And that's what they wanted to cater for. How inspirational is he in the way that he's gone about building Nike, but also some of the philanthropic work that he does now?
Yeah.
I just saw recently he donated a huge amount of money, again, on top of what he's already done.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting insight in itself, isn't it? When you think about the richest men in the world, whether it's Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, Phil Knight, and they get to a certain stage and they realize all the extrinsic stuff, money and status and so forth, it's good, but it doesn't fulfill them. So what they do with that wealth is what fulfills them. And it's pretty cool when you see, Phil's always had that perspective, right? Making a difference, not making a dollar, and the dollars will come. But I had lunch with Phil a few years ago, just pre-COVID. And I asked him this question, whether Nike's purpose, which was to bring innovation and inspiration to every athlete in the world, and if you've got a body, you're an athlete. I asked him, was that his personal purpose? And he said yes. And I thought that's really, really cool when you can take your own personal purpose into an organization and create Nike, right?
Yeah.
Which, I've said this a lot, is just a storytelling platform. And the irreverent anti-establishment way that Nike went about breaking the rules, but also had this passion to do things better, even from the very first shoe that they created, the waffle iron, right through the playfulness, the innovation, the disruption, the adventure, the excitement. They were just playing, right? It wasn't kind of work to Phil. And when you joined Nike at that period in the early 90s, you just got caught up in it, and they gave you so much empowerment and autonomy to play as well, right? So, it led to signing up Shane Warne and developing the air flipper and, having fun with that. And it was just, I learned so much from the Nike chapter, and how to help people. It had to be a sanctuary for athletes, because where can they take their armor off and just be themselves and connect with the human being and so forth. So when I came back to Australia, I was fascinated by that and helping athletes on that journey as well.
Speaking of athletes, and I know you touched on this a little bit about the external and internalizing things, but what patterns do you see in the world's best athletes and even leaders when it comes to mindset and performance?
What they have in common?
Or what their greatest challenge point is, maybe.
That's such a good question. This is not just for athletes. I'd say this is for everyone on the planet, is balancing confidence and belief. And this is a fascinating insight that it's taken me quite a while to figure this out. Confidence is evidence-based and belief is existential-based. Like, it's deep-rooted, it's foundational-based. Yeah. So you can believe in a God even though you can't prove he or she exists, just like you can believe in your potential even though you haven't done anything yet, right? So a young kid just joins an AFL team, or you can believe in your potential, and then the glue between confidence and belief is trust.
Yeah.
That's the powerful, because you earn trust from confidence at your skills, and trust that if you believe in your potential, you trust you'll find a way through. The most important belief before you start that whole journey, though, is just believe that you're worthy, no matter what, just as you are.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can believe that you are worthy, then you'll trust, whether you win or lose a game or get an A or a D, that it's okay. You're already enough, right?
Yeah.
Just as you are. So there's a separation between who you are and what you do. So you can be totally committed to whatever it is, but totally detached from the outcome. It doesn't define you. It doesn't define your worth. That's the biggest challenge for the whole world, not just for athletes. I define an athlete as anyone who likes to compete and have fun and play, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that is by far the most important belief. And I think I've said this to you before.
That's a profound insight, because not just with my own kids, but I hear plenty of parents that struggle with their kids and, the fear of failure or wanting to be the best, but that almost already at a young age going, well, if I'm not, or if I don't play a good game instantly, then I'm not enough.
Yep.
Or they become scared of actually going and participating and doing what we all know is what's so special about sport, or participating, and that's the play element.
Yeah.
It almost puts a barrier there already at a young age. What's the advice to parents like myself to help their kids or themselves on that journey?
Yeah, great question. Well, I always say the 6 most powerful words a parent can say to a kid is, I love to watch you play. And all the research, all the studies that are done on this in the US of college students on their way home from school, all they wanted their parents to say is, I love to watch you play. And obviously parents, this transference of unfulfilled desire from parent down to child, should have done this, could have done this, how much do you really want it, and so forth.
Has that got worse based on what you see and hear nowadays? And do you think that extent, this is just my perception of the world, parents now feel like because there is the autonomy or the ability to have a little bit more flexibility in some of their work, they can attend more of the games and so forth, therefore they're at more, therefore they're placing almost something that they've missed out on onto their kids?
Yeah, I'll answer it this way. The obsession with extrinsic motivations has got far worse.
Yeah.
So craving recognition and your identity becoming what you do, not who you are, that's become far worse than connecting with the intrinsic motivation. So getting back to advice for parents, I ran a session recently for the parents of elite athletes, and I asked them what's the 3 most powerful words you can say to your kid is, and of course most people say I love you, or it might be you are enough, and so forth, and they're all right. You absolutely want to say those things, but for me it's no matter what. Whatever you want to do with your life, I've got your back no matter what. I'm going to support you no matter what. It's kind of unconditional. And then from a language point of view, you reward intrinsic behaviors and motivations, not extrinsic. Right? And what I mean by that is process over outcome, right? Well done when you fell down and you got up again and you kept going, or well done when you didn't know what you had to do and you had to problem solve that tricky situation, or well done when you helped your best friend who didn't know whether she was supposed to stand on the netball court. We call these things intrinsic motivations. If you reward those, because a child can control those things. They can't control whether they win or lose a game. They can control their intrinsic motivations. And if they're motivated by, I guess the three most powerful intrinsic motivations is play, right? What does play look like, right? It might be competing, having fun, experimenting, being curious, discovering. So what does play look like for me today? Sometimes it's just pure fun, imagination. Sometimes it's competitive. You want to see how far you can go from a competitive point of view. Purpose, like what you do has a reason. That reason really matters. Like, do I really enjoy doing what I'm doing? Do I really enjoy being part of a team and helping others and so forth? So, and the third one is potential. That's just learning and growing and the possibility of what I can do with my skills. And if you encourage in the kids those three intrinsic motivations, whatever happens from that moment is kind of irrelevant. Like, it's great to have validation and win a game or win a grand final, but you don't need it because your motivations are more intrinsic than extrinsic, right? And so that whole fear of failure or fear of success, which are pretty similar. One's a fear of falling, one's a fear of flying. But they come from the same place, is believing that I need to do something or achieve something in order to be someone. And that's the great disease for kids. So helping them identify that if they're just having a crack and doing their best, everyone's on their own journey, and they can start to determine what they like, what they're good at. That's probably one of the biggest opportunities for parents, to help kids become more self-determined than socially determined or social media determined, because the distraction that our kids are going through today, that you and I didn't have to go through in our generation, or probably you to some degree, it's just crazy, right? The amount of interference and distraction for young kids in terms of their sense of self and identity. So helping them, and you start really small, like, what are my taste buds like? Like, seriously, what do I like to eat, and what don't I, and what makes me laugh, and what makes me cry, or what makes me angry? When kids start to determine who they are and what they want for them and only them, right? Sporting interests, musical interests, whatever. And you get that they can kind of stay in their lane and just accept the journey that they're on. But if they don't accept that journey, they're going to be comparing and judging and getting out of their lane. And getting back to the young kids who, and the problem is if they're role models, right? And you've got this challenge being an elite athlete, right? Your kids look up to you and think, he's a very famous footballer. Maybe that's what I need to do in order to be happy or successful. As opposed to, no, I just need to do my best, have a crack. I love my dad unconditionally, but I'm on my own journey and create that separation. And it's really hard, right? Because love, right, is so strong, but you can go too far and think, okay, I want to be a rock star or a superstar or so forth. And then I'll be validated, then I'll be loved, then I'll be happy. And I know you had that challenge yourself. It's just, so we have a responsibility with our use of language as well, not to put that kind of pressure onto the kids.
Speaking of me, and let's get to that, where do you want to start with our journey together? I suppose it's the first conversation, but then it's the first meeting, which was very much like we are right now, sitting on your couch, and I think you're on an armchair. And it went for a long time.
Yeah, it did.
It was early morning. What year? End of 2016?
2016, I reckon it was October. It was October 2016.
What are your first memories or thoughts when I walked into the room looking like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, and maybe some more?
You were incredibly nervous. And it's a quirky process, right? Making sense of your story and so forth. So I think I just tried to relax you with storytelling. I think we might have spoken a lot about Andre Agassi and his journey early on. My recollections of that, I'm also incredibly in awe of people like you, Cotch, who are prepared to lean in and go on a journey to learn. Nothing else was working, right? At the time, there was 3 rival groups trying to sack the coach, sack the captain, and sack the board, right, in 2016. It was a Monty Python meets Seinfeld episode, right? All kind of merged into
the train wreck.
Yeah. And I think you lose your last game by
over 100.
Right. So it was a pretty interesting and volatile time at Richmond. And the captain and the coach are the two most significant people in the club, with the chairman Peggy and Brendan, the CEO. And I just remember the vulnerability and the courage required for you to do that. And I remember it wasn't that session, but there was a session not long after that where you were opening up with your family, and they weren't ready for it. Your dad wasn't ready for it. Brooke wasn't ready for it and stuff. And it was quite confronting and jarring when you're having these conversations, because we've all got the mask on, the armor on for self-preservation purposes, and you took it off.
Yeah.
I remember it was one session you said, Crowe, is this all worth it? Because I think you'd had a fight with someone in the family. I just had to keep saying, trust me, keep going. And then there was a moment you kind of like almost like stood up and said, I'm all in, right? And from that moment on, you spoke probably for an hour without taking a breath, and you cried. And the liberation that you felt when you left, I don't know if you remember, but that session, it went so long that your car got towed.
It did. Geez, I was angry initially.
Well, normally that would have really angered you, but I do remember you laughed about that. You had to go get your car, miss training or whatever, and go find your car. And then from that moment on, you also realized that that also enabled you to be yourself, because Trent Cotchin's natural state is a play state, right? Clearly you are having fun. You're putting milk crates on your head, you're telling jokes, and your early play memories hiding from your dad under the bed and so forth. I remember that.
Lucky mum and dad didn't get up and did him mischief during that time, because that would have freaked me out.
Exactly right. Yeah. Of what the memory would become. And I just remember from that moment on, Koch, everything that happened in 2017 was a consequence of what you guys did in 2016. Like, it's an inside out process. Like, if 2016 doesn't happen and you and Dimmer in particular don't go on that journey, 2017, 2019, 2020 doesn't happen, right? Because of the disconnection that I think was identified. It requires an enormous amount of courage, authenticity, vulnerability, creating that sense of belonging and connection, understanding the power of storytelling, understanding pressure, the demon of expectations and so forth, and removing that. There was so many things that you did that hadn't even been identified. Richmond had the demon of expectations for like 30 years. Yeah, right. That Richmondy thing that everyone would speak about, we'd be 5 goals up at 3/4 time and lose the last quarter, or 4 games in front leading in the finals and finish 9th, right?
Yeah. So
that expectation and pressure, once you're able to identify that and let that go for yourself first and foremost, but then the rest of the organization, like, it's incredible, right? And I think I've said this before. I think I asked you, do you ever feel nostalgic for a moment while you're still in it? And I could tell, I backed for Richmond, right, as a kid. So spending 2017 and 2016 with you and Dimmer and then the rest of the team, and to see the growth of you on that journey is one of my greatest memories. And I'll cherish that forever. Yeah. And it started with courage and vulnerability to lean in, work out what was holding me back, the stories you were telling yourself about, the perfection myth, and thinking leadership was all about you, as opposed to creating an environment to help others realize their potential. And once you flipped from I to we, the permission you gave for others to be vulnerable and real and raw, but it also took the pressure off you. You didn't have to, that's the great thing about when you realize that leadership's not about you. You lose ego and you lose fear, because it's literally not about you. And so the authentic Trent Cotchin showed up and created that permission for everyone else to be vulnerable as well. And that, I think it's called psych safety, right? Yeah. But it's just permission to be you and have the courage to be you, rather than feeling like you have to fit in. People could create that sense of belonging.
Yeah. Obviously, 2017 kind of becomes a blur, and it wasn't like it was all smooth sailing. There was plenty of conversations we had that were different challenges, and that's the beauty of being part of a team. I think, you're dealing with a whole heap of different personalities and moments and time and results being determined every single weekend. Then 18, 19 and 20, clearly we continued to work together. Is there a particular moment where you saw the work that you had carried out with me, or the work that we'd carried out together, come to life in the most profound way?
I think it was 2020. 2020 was a train wreck for the whole world, right? With COVID and the lockdowns, and there was spot fires going on everywhere. And Richmond in particular, there were spot fires going on everywhere, right? And I remember towards there was, I think one of the players had, broken a curfew or whatever, and was about to be sent home, and there was a lot of vitriol and, finger pointing and so forth. And I remember you went in and you called bullshit on pretty much everyone and said, that's just not us. Right? Where's the love? Where's the compassion? Where's the kindness? And when you told me this, I was kind of tearing up, because we forget because of fear, right? We become in self-preservation. We start pointing the fingers and so forth. And for you in that moment to wrap your arms around not only this player, but the whole group, was, and what happened from that, because I mean, Richmond shouldn't have made the finals, let alone made the grand final, let alone won the grand final, right? I think that was probably one of my, and I wasn't even there. Obviously, we were talking remotely that year. To see what you did in that bubble, in that hub, to continue on the connection and belonging, it became a competitive advantage, clearly, right, for teams who understand that. That's easily one of my favorite memories. But even in 2017, your pre-match speeches went from being serious and rah 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 to just making people laugh, and then you encouraged other players to do similar, and just created this beautiful sense of playfulness, and excitement, where you didn't take things so seriously, and obviously I remember, I think you've shared this in your book, the moment with Tex Walker when you're holding the Premiership Cup, right? And you told the players that you're not going to let it go, right? You tell the story better than I do. And they're all little things. They're tiny little things. But in my opinion, it's those little things that create this beautiful sense of fun and camaraderie and not taking life so seriously, right? Which often destroys athletes in the form of competition. And in my opinion, that's your signature strength. And it's probably the greatest gift that you gave Richmond. And the sense of purpose. Like, you unlocked your purpose pretty early. In fact, you unlocked your purpose before the club did, from memory. And again, that shift from I to we, where Trent Cotchin is creating an environment to help others realize their potential. And the players loved you so much for that. And then they became leaders. And it's amazing what can be achieved when no one cares who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And before that, 2016, 2015, there was so many of, self-preservation, ego, fear. And I think you brought a real humility and hunger, right? And the opposite of humble and hungry is arrogant and entitled and complacent, sorry.
Yeah.
And when you brought that humble, hungry appetite, and Dimmer did the same thing, right? The combination is almost unstoppable. And that's by far my greatest memories. And I'll cherish them for the rest of my life.
As will I. And I appreciate your support through that journey. But in the role that you play when you're mentoring people and you're doing a lot of heavy lifting in sessions one-on-one, but also effectively carrying a lot of the challenge that they carry in their roles, who do you use to be a sounding board, or at least kind of debrief some of your experiences? Because I'm sure that can sometimes be a burden to carry with you. Leave it at that. And do you have your own mentors?
Yeah, I do. But they're also reverse mentors. Like, you're a mentor of mine, because when you work with someone and you connect with their story, and then we have conversations about, the work that you're doing in leadership and so forth, it's just, I'm always learning, right? And I actually learn when things don't go well for the person, more so than when they do go well. That's for me, and obviously the work doesn't always work, right? So why doesn't it work, right? I learned with an athlete this year that she was really struggling with acceptance. She just couldn't accept things. And there was a real barrier there for just, self-acceptance, but just accepting things that weren't going her way. And she wasn't admitting stuff. So she came up with a just admit it list. And it was so profound for both of us that she just admitted that she was scared.
Yeah.
She also wasn't admitting that she wanted to win a world title. And once she realized, she developed this really long just admit it list, we both looked like, oh my God, that's profound. But that unlocked the ability to then accept and let go all those things, right? The interrelationship between confidence and belief, I didn't know that till this year. In terms of mentors, my kids absolutely are reverse mentors, as is Sally. I'm a huge reader. When Brené Brown codified vulnerability, obviously I was working in courage and compassion and finding purpose and being open and open-minded and playful, as we discussed. And she codified that in one word, vulnerability. And I think it was 2015 or 2016 that my son, Harry, put me onto Brené's work. And I thought I became a sponge, right? Because, and especially around understanding shame as well. In terms of mentors, I've got therapists, psychologists that I tap into both overseas and in Australia, because I'm not a psychologist, and the work I don't do work in mental health at all, more emotional health and well-being. But there are some crossover in terms of understanding someone's story, and often I'll suggest that they catch up with a professional, in terms of the level of trauma or deficit that they need to kind of unpack in a professional sense. So I take from everywhere. Different types of philosophy, whether it's Stoicism or Buddhism or so forth. And, mojo is a perspective. I remember when Ted Lasso came out, he said Ted Lasso is not a man and it's not a TV show, but it's like a vibe.
Yeah.
It's similar with mojo is not a man or it's a company, but it's just a perspective that takes from a lot of different elements in terms of working out who you are, what you want, and how to get there. And if you unpack every ism and every ology that ever exists, whether it's sociology, anthropology, theology, psychology, you'll come to the realization that there's only two needs that we have as humans. And I've learned this through my mentors as well. One is the need for attachment, and the other one is the need for authenticity. Now, attachment means that I'm worthy of love and belonging and connection and, attachment. And authenticity means the courage to be me and live a life true to me. And the sequencing is important, because if you don't believe you're worthy of love or belonging or connection, you're going to go searching for it in all the wrong places, to the detriment of having the courage to be you. And that's why it's the number one deathbed regret now is, I wish I had the courage just to be me rather than the expectations of others. So helping someone go on that journey, because that, Eastern or indigenous cultures call these roots and wings.
Yeah.
Foundation roots, but then wings to kind of spread, right? We just call it love and courage. Now, you can call it attachment and authenticity, but no matter which way you look at it, if you can help someone develop that unconditional love of self, I am enough, no matter what, just as I am, but I'm not done yet. I also have this belief in my potential. I prove, the possibility of what I can do. That's courage. And I guarantee you, Koch, if you can just get those two things right and accept your imperfections, so you're not comparing and judging yourself, you have the freedom to go on this journey. And you don't mind what happens from that moment on. You're committed but detached from outcome. Yeah. And my mentors collectively, all the different quotes and all the different approaches and exercises and so forth, is really coming to bear with just those two key beliefs.
Yeah. You touched on courage. The Latin word, it comes from the Latin word core. Can you explain exactly how that's defined?
The Latin word core, which means heart, and the original definition of courage, and this is one of Brené-isms, is to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And when you see someone do that, and you literally brought that, I remember how nervous you were first time you got up in front of all the players and the coaches at Richmond in December 2016, I think, and told your story for the very first time, and they saw Trent the human, not Trent the footballer or Trent the captain. And I'll never forget, because a lot of the players texted me after that session, and I know there was a lot of tears both ways, but it's the power of being seen and enabling someone else to be seen as well. And we do not understand how powerful storytelling is, because as humans, we have this thing called imagination. And when someone tells their story, you're imagining a young Trent, thought he had to be the perfect captain and the perfect this, the perfect strategy and so forth. And coming to terms with your own imperfections and accepting your own imperfections, right? But also believing you're worthy. That's the power of storytelling for me. And we've lost that art form, I think. We got caught up in information and data and reports and PowerPoint presentations and so forth. And, the Triple H that you rolled out with Dimmer was so profound. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
And just creates this incredible human connection. And it's often the imperfections in the story, and your whole, I think I've still got a video of your whole talk, but it was it was the imperfections that created the connection at Richmond. Normally it's, we got to do this and this is how good I am, so forth. But the storytelling is often the imperfections, and that's where the magic is, I think.
I love that you touched on some of your mentors being your boys and Sally as a sounding board as well. How important has it been to be on that journey with your family? I know how much they mean to you, and that, you know, outside of all the amazing work you've done, I'm sure some of your greatest moments and memories have been the time spent with them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's fantastic for them as well, right? You integrate your life with the human being and the human doing. You know, most of us have this kind of shooting star, and I got caught up in it big time at Nike, where you achieve an enormous amount in a short straight of time, but you might leave a trail of carnage and destruction behind you, right? In terms of your family or your colleagues. And I saw that a lot at Nike. So coming back to Australia, I really wanted to integrate my life and kind of bring family along for the ride as well. Thankfully, they all love sport, you know. So, you know, if one of my sons, Ned, can be with me in Hawaii for a surfing event, Sally could be at Wimbledon, right? And the kids are all obsessed with Richmond Footy Club, right? So they get to ride that wave and obviously with all the surfers as well. So it's fantastic. And the questions they ask me, because they're human and these athletes are human as well, right? So we're all dealing with the human condition, or how to overcome fear or adversity and so forth. So that's been incredibly powerful for me as well. And you know, I'll never forget the 2017 grand final when, you know, I wanted to sit with my family, you know, as opposed to in the official role. Unfortunately, there's 27 crows, so there was a lot of favors to try and get everyone in the ground that day. But you know, watching my son Harry cry when the siren went, and myself and Sally was crying as well, and so forth, and you know, there was so many my dad was very much in that memory for me at that particular moment, right? And I think Harry might have been wearing an old jumper that I had from my childhood as well. So yeah, in terms of and you know, the memories that I have from that is just so special. Yeah.
What's been your greatest lesson through fatherhood?
My greatest lesson through fatherhood, not to interfere. Yeah, I think I learnt that the hard way. Of that's the problem with love, right?
Yep.
Is that you think you're doing the right thing, but you're probably not empowering your kids. I probably went, you know, way too hard on Harry as the oldest, because you know, you're learning to be a parent for the very first time.
Was there a certain age where you learnt that lesson for Harry, or a moment?
Probably later on. That's what I mean. Like, looking backwards, just instead of meeting them where they're at and making it their journey, I'm probably transferring, you know, subconscious. I want them to be successful, so they'll be happy.
Yep.
But of course, the kids are learning. My dad wants me to be successful, to be loved.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, I've learned that in my professional sense. And then I look back on, I did a podcast with Hamish Blake on how other dad's dad. And I realized through that interview that, oh shit, I've made every single mistake
Haven't we all?
a parent could make in terms of that transference. So that's probably the biggest lesson, was just, you know, let them play and let them learn on themselves. Encourage them, be available to them, be open to them and love them, but not interfere in their journey. And I think it's probably the biggest learning. If I had my time again, I'd create more freedom for them. Mm.
And then from a relationship point of view, you and Sally, I'm sure she's had to have a huge amount of patience at different stages, because your greatest strength is that you say yes a lot, but it's also your greatest weakness. I think you said your parents, their greatest strength or something they valued was selflessness. Is that the word you used?
Yep.
Is that something that you've tried to do in your life, or is there a different word that kind of defines what's, like my old man used compromise? Is there something you would use to help with a healthy relationship?
Well, instinctively, what comes to mind is play and love, and in my opinion, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, play is the verb of love, and I think for Sally and my relationship, I think in terms of taking things seriously, or, you know, why weren't we invited to that event or so forth, but just playing with life, and having that kind of generous assumptions to other people and each other as well.
Yeah.
Sally, occupational therapist, sharp as a tack, incredibly compassionate. She's an empath on steroids, right? And so, but just as a sounding board for me and Mojo, right? She's like absolutely incredible, right? And she'd read every chapter of the book that I've just finished writing, and her feedback was incredible and profound, and I agreed with everything, and I hadn't seen it, right? And she's acutely aware of my blind spots, of my not enoughnesses, my fear points and so forth, and her support and selflessness along the journey is just incredible. Yeah. She's my everything. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. You love the definition of success, or helping people redefine that, to help kind of release them of this pressure of always chasing what's next. How has it changed over your journey in the way you define success, or how do you define it now?
Yeah, it's a huge shift for me, and kind of hoping the whole world starts to get their head around this idea of redefining success, less from an extrinsic point of view into an intrinsic point of view that you can control.
Yeah.
Right. So, you and I have spoken about, most people live their lives today in this gap mentality, that it's that when then syndrome. When I get that promotion, then I'll be successful. Or when I get that $1 million, then I'll be validated. Or in that relationship, then I'll be loved, right? And this gap creates all this cortisol, because you're here, but you're not actually here. You're living in the future.
Yeah.
And you need that to be successful. And that need creates that fear, that cortisol, and because you don't feel enough, there's that scarcity mentality. And I think it's such a disease, right? You can want those things, but in terms of what success is, for me, is the process to achieve those things. And if you measure backwards, like if I said to you, righto, Cotch, here's a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write down all the wins that you've had from a little kid living in a chuka, with your family, all the little gains, all the little successes, all the little growth points you've had from that moment to where you are now. And you did this exercise, and I said, righto, how do you feel? You'd probably say, I feel grateful because all these incredible things happen, right? You'll say, I feel successful. So there's your definition of success. I feel happy. I feel confident. And my favorite, I feel content.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not done yet. There's all these things I want to do with my life. But it means everything you go after from this moment on is a want, not a need. If you need it for your self-worth or to be loved or validated, right, you're always going to be searching.
Sure. Yeah.
So the way I define success is saying, rather than saying I know I'll be successful when, is we say I know I'm being successful when. So you bring it into the present moment.
Yeah.
For me, I know I'm being successful when I'm investing in relationships, experiences, and memories. Right. And I know you've spoken with Hamish McLaughlin about this at length, which I absolutely loved that episode, by the way. When I'm doing stuff that matters, right, or living my why, that's really important to me as well. And doing stuff that matters might be just having a belly laugh with my kids. You don't have to save the world, but with what you're doing has a reason. That reason really matters. There's real meaning to it. Right? For me, that's successful. But also the learning and growing and kind of seeing what's possible and kind of putting yourself out there out of your comfort zone. For me, that's success as well, right? And for me, it's that staying true to who I am, the courage to be me, and overcoming imposter syndrome or so forth, and then helping others do the same. I think that's and I said this about our good friend Ash Barty, right? Success for Ash wasn't winning Wimbledon; it was believing that she could win Wimbledon. Right? That's what she could control. Right? She had no clue whether she's going to win Wimbledon, but believing that she could win Wimbledon, which happened, like 6 months earlier at a cafe in Brisbane called Moo Moo's, where, it was a very emotional kind of session. But her belief, and I never forget it, the look on her face goes, screw it. Yeah, I believe I can win. Right? I believe I can beat Serena. I believe I can win Wimbledon. For me, that's success. And when you redefine success back to these intrinsic motivations that you can control, it's incredible, right? You can't control the future and you can't control uncertainty, but you can control your relationship with the future and your relationship with uncertainty just by believing your potential and trusting you'll find a way. And if it doesn't work out, it's all good because you also believe that you're enough, just as you are, no matter what, right? And you get that. So for me, my definition of success. Extrinsic motivations are still really important, right? You need money to live and you need a house to live under. So you still want to get validation along the way, right? Make a dollar and make a difference kind of thing. But in terms of what your definition of success is, I think we need to bring it back into things we can control versus things we can't control and get the balance right. So you develop what's, I guess, an internal score card, and then you've got an external scoreboard. Now, you can't control the scoreboard, right? We can't control things you can't control. You can control the scorecard. You can control your intrinsic motivations. And for me, that's success.
Wonderful insight and some key points that people can definitely take away. 2 to finish. 5 people, dinner party, they have to come.
You mentioned you were going to ask me that question. I've completely forgot about thinking about it. So they have to come. So they have to be alive?
No, they can be dead.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring them back to life for you.
Oh, okay. Can I give 2 answers?
Yeah, sure. It depends what they are.
The first one's a boring one. Well, it's not boring to me, but I would love to have dinner with my 3 kids and my dad, and Sally with making up the 5th, because they never got to meet each other, and I would have loved that to happen. Yeah.
What do you think you'd eat?
What's that?
What would you eat if that was able to happen?
Oh, Dad loved meat, steak, or
any particular cut?
Bangers and mash.
Oh, bangers and mash with a bit of gravy.
Yeah, porterhouse steak, bangers and mash, gravy. Sally's a very good cook, right? So she would have done those potatoes, with the nice thyme and salt and so forth.
Okay.
So my first instinct is I would love for that to happen, because, the kids ask about Dad, or Sally asks about Dad, and obviously I think about Dad. In terms of people that inspire me, or just people that I'm really curious about, Robin Williams. His movies, Master of Play, exactly, and he Master of Care as well, Master of Purpose, just an extraordinary human. And he, I don't think he knew his own brilliance. And for me, he's like I talk about what would Dad do. Like, I often think about what would Robin Williams do in this situation, right? So people like Robin Williams, Maya Angelou, is just some of her work is just incredible. In my opinion, she was like Brené Brown before Brené Brown. Brené Brown would be pretty good to have, at a dinner party as well. Who else would I like to have? Definitely my mum. My mum's 96, and her wisdom and her humor is incredible, right? So I'd probably love to have her as well. How many is that?
We can leave it at that if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. Nelson Mandela.
Love it.
I always wanted to meet Nelson Mandela. I had an opportunity once when I was working with Nike and we sponsored the Springboks, but I wasn't allowed to meet him, unfortunately, because there was too much politics involved in the Springboks at the time and Nike and so forth. So, and I was like, it was the one time in my life I shouldn't have told my boss what I was doing, because I went up the flagpole and they said, "Yeah, you're not having that meeting." I'm like, no offense, but this is not about you. This is about me. So, yeah, I'm inspired by people like Nelson Mandela as well.
Very good. The question we love to finish on: if you could go back and give your 16-year-old self, which was a pretty significant time in your life, one piece of advice that would help you on the journey that's ahead, what would it be?
Believe that it'll all work out in the end. Yeah, like most kids, the anxiety that you have about who am I and where's it going and will I be okay and so forth, and to have trust that it'll all be okay in the end, and just staying true to you. I think whenever I've gone off the rails in my life, it's always been I just haven't been true to myself, or haven't believed that things will work out, and so you go into a dark place, as we all do, right? So if I had my time again as a 16-year-old, to alleviate a lot of pain, and things happen for a reason, and you'll figure it out one day. That would have also avoided a lot of anxiety along the way as well.
I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to throw in one more.
Yeah.
It's not actually about you. In the spirit of vulnerability, and that being a big part of the work that we started to carry out together, in your opinion, what's one thing that's holding me back in my journey in life right now?
Probably letting go. Yeah, I'd say. Yeah, and getting back to your natural state, which for me is play for you,
Yeah.
and understanding what that means for you. For most athletes or anyone moving out, you think about it, right? Since you were 5 years old, you're in a particular discipline, AFL football. And then all of a sudden, one day, you retire, right? And it's like, well, shit, what do I do now, right? Racehorses go crazy when they retire because they're 6 months old, they're running around a track, certain diet,
Yeah.
there's a crowd on a weekend and training at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then one day they wake up and they're not told they retired. They just don't have to do that anymore, but they're so institutionalized as a racehorse. So you kind of go a bit insane, as you know. So separating your identity from that and just being a foundation chapter to create all these incredible new chapters. But sometimes we think, shit, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough or successful enough to do these other things. And we lose our competitive advantage. So, yeah, for me, for you, and we haven't caught up with it, I just, I'm not sure it's holding you back per se, but it's probably a reminder. The courage to be you and be true to you. I think it's kept you in a pretty good state along your journey, both as a dad, a husband, a footballer and a leader and a friend. And I think if you stay true to that, the curiosity, whether it's this podcast, whether it's Posse Socks, whether it's the leadership you're doing with Brisbane Lions and so forth, clearly you've got a passion for health and leadership and well-being and positivity and so forth. And I think, the best is still to come in terms of ideas or business interests or so forth. But I just, that'd be my advice, to keep play on.
Well, Crowe, thank you so much, not just for today, but for the fact that I think you genuinely changed my life, but I have a pretty strong feeling that you may have even saved it at a time where I was at the lowest point. I had wonderful people around me in my corner, but sometimes they're too close to really pull you out of the darkness that you're in. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being such a wonderful mentor, but more importantly, a great friend that I can always count on for a hug, a chat, not quite a kiss, but I would if you said yes. But thank you for being you and staying true to that through your life and journey.
Thank you. It's a privilege of a lifetime to do what I do. And as I said, the memories we have in particular 2016, the dark time, but then into 2017, like it wasn't supposed to happen that quick. But, as we say, when the pupil's ready, the preacher will come, right? And it's just, thank you for being you as well, and for doing this as well, for sharing these stories with the world, which I'm pretty sure that's why you're doing this, right? To share interesting stories, and hopefully someone gets it from. So keep telling your story.
Yes. And no matter what. Three powerful words.
Whatever happens, no matter what.
Love you, mate.
You too.